So, without further ado, a little bit about the Windrush generation and the NHS before we really get into hearing from Lynette. As you know, the Windrush generation, it was in 1948. We had the 75th anniversary, not last year, the year before. That's 75 years since the Windrush sort of docked at Tilbury Docks, and also the birth of the NHS. I don't know if people in the room know that, but there's a twinning of those two dates, and they are very, very important. So within Somerset African Caribbean Network, we have members, and we have, in terms of our African Caribbean community, a lot of pride in the fact that some of our families can boast several generations that joined the NHS. And I was particularly proud to join the 75th anniversary, the walk of witness from Waterloo Station to Southwark Cathedral for a service, and sharing that walk with senior NHS workers. And that was a very proud moment for me and within my family, who have a history of NHS. So I just wanted to say that, and clearly Lynette will tell you she didn't come on the Windrush, but we refer to that generation as the Windrush generation or the Windrush era. So that's the lesson for today. So can I introduce you to the poster girl from our last event? And she was our poster girl, and we were very proud to display this panel that you can see there. This is Lynette Richards-Lord. We've been telling her story in Somerset for several years now. It's an important story. It tells a Black British story from some time ago. And we don't do a lot of that in Somerset, sadly, and we want to do a lot more about that. So, Lynette, you don't need to stand. You can stand and say hello, but sit if you would like to.
Thank you very much.
But anyway, it's lovely to have you here. And I would like to say on behalf of Somerset, welcome home.
Oh, thank you very much. I feel very much at home because where my bedroom is facing, it's facing Taunton Station. And that is my first impression of Taunton. But it's home for me, although I've been here since 1959 and left in 62. But I come back from time to time. But I think I'll sit down for a minute.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. My story starts, you want it from the beginning?
Right
from the beginning. When I decided to train as a nurse, it was at my father's instigation in many ways, because he said to me, you want to become a nurse, but if you were a nurse, you would have to become a midwife as well. And I also thought that if I wanted to become a nurse, I wanted to do my nurse training in England. At that time, England was crying out for nursing staff, and people were from the Caribbean like me. By the way, I'm from South America, but never mind. That's a joke between West Indians and Guyanese. We consider ourselves part of the Commonwealth, and we wanted to help. So at 20, having saved up to my fares, my sister and I travelled on the Oranjestad, which is a Dutch ship, and which takes 3 weeks to get from Guyana to England. It was like a cruise, because we stopped at different islands. We stopped in Suriname, in Trinidad, and we stopped in Madeira, and very nice. But we wanted to get to Plymouth, and that was the be-all and end-all. We landed on February 1959, and I spent 2 weeks in London with my priest's parents, because that was the priest who said to me, if you're going to England, you ought to go to the warmest part of England. And he thought Somerset was the warmest part. So hence Musgrove Park. I applied to Musgrove Park, and I had a wonderful matron, Marjorie Prowse. And she made all the preparations for me to be in Taunton. When I got to Taunton, when I arrived at the station, she sent a taxi for me to pick me up. And I thought, this is good. I really didn't expect this. And in addition to that, when I arrived at Plymouth, the British Council were looking after me. So I was really well looked after. I just cannot complain about the hospitality. Anyway, when I saw Matron, she said to me, I will be treating you as if you were my daughter, because you are young and it's the first time you're away from home. Though my sister, she traveled with me, but we separated and she went to Oxford and I went to Somerset. And she said, you'll be well looked after here. We had, at that time, Taunton and Somerset wasn't like what it is now. It was like army barracks we had. And it was used to be an American army barracks. But we all had our separate rooms, which was very nice. And our pay was £9 a month in our hand. And out of that pay, I sent £5 a month to my parents, because I promised them I'm going to England and I should be earning a lot of money. I didn't tell them that it was £9 a month, but that was beside the point. Anyway, I enjoyed my training, made lots of friends. There were about 8 of us from the Caribbean who were there. And the only thing about it is the food wasn't so hot, you know? So we had to learn to cook. We really had to, and we cooked among ourselves. And then the other thing about it is that our hair is different, and we had to cope with that, with finding our own way of managing our hair. No hairdressers. That's just little bits. But when I left home, my vicar, he gave me a letter to introduce me to the church in Taunton. I think it's called Mary Magdalene Church. Because in Guyana, we didn't have TVs and things like that. And our main idea on Sundays was going to church twice a day. And that was it. So that was that. On the wards, that was special, because we started what was called a PTS, Preliminary Training School. And we were there for 3 months. And after that, we then hit the wards, and poor patients had to cope with us. But I enjoyed my training extremely much. I really enjoyed that, because people were very hospitable and very caring. And in fact, when it came to sort of making friends, we made friends with the patients as well as making friends with our colleagues. To cut a long story short, I made a very good friend, who is still my friend after 60 years, and she was a girl called Bernadette from Ireland. And we studied together, but we competed with each other. So when it came to examination times, we saw who would do the best. At the end of the training, Bernadette got the surgical prize and I got the best practical prize. And the matron was extremely pleased with us, because she said, you two are always together, so get your prizes together. So that was the first thing that was very nice to happen to us. After my SRN, little thing happened to me before that. A letter came to me, and it came from the Lord Chamberlain's office. And the letter it was addressed to me, but the matron had the letter. So she called me and said to me, Lynette, who do you know in the Lord Chamberlain's office? I said, I haven't a clue, I don't know. But it was through the British Council who got to know me when I arrived. They were keeping in touch with what was happening with me, and they were having a garden party for students who were doing well. And they invited me to a garden party in Buckingham Palace. So I went, and my mother made my dress, and matron was very pleased with me, and it was a very, very nice event, which happened the same year as I was qualifying. After that, I went on to do my midwifery training in Cheltenham and Birmingham. But Taunton has always been at the back of my mind. It's always been close to me in the sense that it gave me my general training, and it opened my mind about how to look after patients. Because although there weren't any black patients that I looked after, it gave me the idea that you can personalize patients' care. So when I became a midwife and then went on to become a manager, that was always at the back of my mind, that sort of personalized care that is given. I'll move on and tell you a little bit about my career, because after going on to doing my midwifery, I went back to Guyana because I promised that after 5 years I will go back to Guyana to do my training, my work there. But they were having a lot of political problems, so they decided, my father said to me, you ought to go back to England and continue with your work. So I then went on to do midwifery, specialize in midwifery. I then became a district midwife and became a clinical teacher in midwifery. And after 4 years of that, I then went on to become a manager in midwifery, to Greenwich. And then after 4 years, went on to Wandsworth. And in Wandsworth, I spent the rest of my midwifery career there, because I was promoted there 4 times. I became a senior nursing officer, and then became a divisional nursing officer, and I became the first black midwife, manager, looking after the whole of Wandsworth. And of course, during that time, there were lots of reorganizations. And after 4 years, they became directorships, and I became a director of nursing and midwifery. After that, I started making changes, because I was responsible not only for St. George's Hospital, which was the main hospital, but I was responsible for a hospital called South London Hospital, which was the second women's hospital in the country. And that had to close in order for St. George's to become the biggest teaching hospital in London now. We then were responsible for neonatal services, which was part of the whole of the region, responsible for that, where babies, very ill babies, were being looked after there. And then there were visits from different places, like Oklahoma, America, looking to see what St. George's was doing. Then we had an invitation from Oklahoma, my health authority, asking me to go and see what they were doing and to teach them what we were doing in St. George's, because I had introduced a personalized care there where midwives were working as teams, and it meant that every mother knew the midwife that she was looking after. In many ways, it's something that should be happening now, because people are complaining how the sort of care that they're getting, they're not being cared for in a personal way. And I was invited to, there was a thing called Maternity Alliance, where they gave the government advice on maternity care. And they invited me to come along to the select committee to tell them about the care that people can have. Teams of midwives, and most of the country actually adopted that type of care. So we walk on, and I moved on from being a director of nursing of midwifery to become a general manager, which meant I looked after the whole of what, if ever you go to London, you hear about Lanesborough Wing. I looked after the whole of that wing, which meant the doctors, everybody who was in that area, they were responsible to me for the care that they were giving. Looking after the staff was essential for me, because I felt when I started working at St. George's, I interviewed everybody, wanting to know what they wanted out of their work and what we wanted out of them. And people who were sick for over a year, I wanted to see why were they sick for a year when I first started in management. Because if you're sick for a year, it means that you're either not coming back or something seriously wrong. And in fact, within a matter of months, they were all back at work, because I think there might have been some issues of color and things like that. But there we are. It was, for me, it was satisfying work because I managed to get them back to work. Anyway, one of the things that happened with regard to the personalized care is that Oklahoma in USA got in touch with Wandsworth, and Wandsworth asked me to go to Oklahoma to do a lecture tour on telling them how midwives can make a difference in their work. Because in America at that time, I don't know if it's changed now, but the doctors did the deliveries and not midwives. They were maternity nurses. So like that, it was something that I was able to introduce to them, and they were able to work on that. I'll move on from there, because I think when it comes to my actual career pattern, my career in the NHS finished in 1992, but then I was recalled in 1993 by the Department of Health to represent the UK in Europe to deal with inequalities in health. So I was formed part of the committee with the rest of Europe to advise on inequalities of health. I did that for 2 years. And then in Croydon, we had a problem. The Medical Office of Health said they had a problem with regard to ethnic minority babies, black babies, African babies, having low birth weight. I did a research for the Department of Health in that as well. All part of the career. Then moving on from there, I went on to go back to Guyana, where I started from. And one of my ex-husband's relatives had bilateral hearing. And out of that, I found that nobody had any hearing aids. I mean, I suffer with hearing loss at the moment, so I know the difficulty of it. And they said to me, when you go back to England, could you see what you can do about it? So I came back and I got in touch with the Commonwealth Society for the Deaf. And they said to me, we can help you if you can help yourself. So they then invited me to become a director with regard funding for Guyana. And we raised funds from the lottery, like what you're doing now, and making sure that we made a total of £250,000. That was in the year 2000. And we actually did enough to have a countrywide service for Guyana. And that is something I really felt very happy about, because it was just out of the blue that came out. And it meant we trained a doctor, 2 technicians, nurses, and we actually had an ambulatory service, which took the service right around the country, so everybody could be tested, and the technicians were able to make the hearing aids. Then the next year, I went back to Guyana. I was on holiday, and they got in touch with me and said to me, did I realize that children were going to school without breakfast? So I thought, so what would you like me to do? Would you like me to raise some funds for that? And we did that. We not only did a breakfast club, but people heard about it, and I belonged to places like the Inner Wheel and Sir Optimus, and I started the Association of Guyanese Nurses, and we raised money in order for us to have a library and we were able to get the breakfast club going, and one of the groups that I belonged to gave us computers so the children could learn how to build computers. So that was that. Okay. Right?
Wow, I think that it'd be great to actually go back to Somerset before we end your talk. Okay. I just wondered if you could tell us a bit about, the journey from Guyana with your sister. What was the journey like?
The journey, as I said, it was on it was like a cruise ship, and we were in a berth, three-bedroom berth, and my sister and I we enjoyed the sights. As I said, one of the places I wanted to see, because as a youngster I liked music and enjoy myself. And they were going to stop at a place called Trinidad, which you probably know about. And Trinidad is noted for its music and its carnivals and so on. And I said to my sister, we're going off on this, aren't we? And she looked at me and said, no, we're not. I'm responsible for you and you're not going there. So I didn't get to go there, but I promised myself that when I was going back to Guyana, I would plan my journey at the time when they were having the carnival so that I can get to fulfill my dream.
Good idea.
So I did that.
Who paid for the trip to Britain?
Well, I paid for my trip to Britain because we had a thing we called it the box hand, where we didn't have banks. We had a group of people, like a group of 20, would pay £10 a month. If you were aiming to get £100, well, it was £100 the fares. We would each pay that per month, and then you take it in turns. That the first month it would be your turn, the second month it would be the other person's turn, but you stayed around and you saved for that. Oh. So that was £100. Mm. But then I not only had to save for mine, because when my dad said to me, you have to go with your sister, I had to save up for her to come as well. Okay. So that delayed me.
Right. And how much was that in Guyanese dollars?
Well, £1 was equivalent to 280 Guyanese dollars. So it was 480. Mm. It was a lot of money. But when you're determined to do something, you just do it.
So then you kind of, you guys got to Plymouth and you had to go separate ways.
We had to go our separate ways. But she, as I said, the British Council met us, and they put her on a train to Oxford. And we didn't see each other for another 6 months, because, we didn't earn a lot of money. And then I went with my vicar's parents for 2 weeks in London. They showed me the sights of London, and then they reserved a train for me to get to Taunton.
And this is where you arrived in this
And this is where I arrived. And
you were met by the car?
And I was met by the car, the taxi driver, and took me to the matron's office. And she was really a very special lady, because in one of the books, I've got her in there, where she was at the prize giving, and she really took a special interest in what was happening. But the first year when you were a nurse, no matter where you are in the country, you're the bedpan queen. You spend your time in the sluice, just not with the patients. You're just cleaning bedpans. But when you get to your second year and you pass your exams, you expect to start learning how to do dressings and doing pressure sores, doing nice things, doing nursing, not just. And I got to my second year, and this lady who's the sister, she was giving me the bedpans. And I said to her, I'm in my second year, sister, so now I should really be doing other things. Your time will come, Lynette. And I'm one of those people, I don't take no for an answer. So I gave up my lunchtime and I went to see Matron. And I said, Matron, you promised me that I would get good nurse training, but I didn't expect to be in the sluice all the time. She said, is that what's happening to you? I said, yes, Matron. I said, I've been, for the first year, it's all sluice. Second year, I'm still in the sluice. Okay, she said, okay, Lynette, you go back to the ward and I'll sort it out. And she changed it. By the time I got back, it was changed. Yes, I was, oh, I'm so sorry, Lynette. I didn't realize. I said, well, I did say, but you didn't hear me. But I'm glad it's changed.
So what were you doing in Somerset when you went to the church here when you could?
When I could, yes.
And what about going out into the community, into the town? What was that like? Did you manage to sort of, have some social life in the...
Oh, yes. I had a social life because he's laughing.
So you had to sort the food out first of all.
Yeah, the food was all right. We had to sort ourselves out of the food. I mean, I was really thin. I mean, I'm fat now. I was thin, but it was one of those things where I joined a choir. We had someone called a home sister. They're not around there anymore, but they looked after you. They made sure that you had like a social life, and they taught us Scottish dancing. She taught us that, and I used to play the piano in those days, so we could play the piano in the room, and then she joined the choir, and at Christmas time we took our capes back to the back and had the red outside, and we went around the pubs and sang. Yes, I had a good time.
So the difference is with you is that some of those nurses that were at the Whittington, what have you, were going to house parties and blues parties, and you you were here doing something on a quieter.
But it wasn't booze. It was really enjoying
Blues, not booze.
the blues. Oh dear! But I learned about chilblains because when you go around in the winter, and you're not protected, when you got back, your feet started. You have that, don't you? Yes.
And the different shoes.
And different shoes. Yes.
Different story.
Yes. Yeah.
So you met people in the town. You were invited to their homes.
Oh gosh, yes. I've made lots of friends, and people used to take me to places like the Bath and West show, and I went to Wells Cathedral, Cheddar Gorge.
Ooh.
Yes. I mean, it was good coming yesterday with the bus, because I was able to point out, I used to go there, been there. And when I passed through places like Bridgewater, I was absolutely amazed how it's changed. It was like a little village when I was there, and now it's a big town. So I met lots of nice people who were patients and who were grateful and who were saying, oh, you're here on your own, come in, and they would invite me to Sunday lunches and things like that.
So Somerset people will not allow me not to ask this question, and that is, did you ever try scrumpy?
No.
Cider? No. That's probably a good idea.
But I was told, if you're going to Somerset, that's what it's noted for.
Of course.
It's cider.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah. Now the accent comes. You're at home, you're feeling at home, Somerset accent comes back. Yeah. So brilliant. Well, we're going to soon hear from, these guys are going to have loads to ask you, no doubt, but I want to actually ask you, looking at that picture, and that's such a wonderful picture of you and your sister, and we've heard that story. I call it the hats and handbags, and I want to know about your fashion and your style and everything like that, and
Oh, right.
what looks you were rocking.
Yes. My mother, she was a seamstress, and she just said to me, what colors would you like to wear, and what would you like to wear? And she made the outfits. Yes. And when now I travel quite a lot nowadays, and it's jeans and t-shirts. But there, when you were leaving, you had to you go with your gloves and hats to match, and you know, it was really stylish. And you're going on a boat, a cruise, you know. So
How did you keep so stylish in a 3-week journey and sort of ending up looking like that?
That is when we were leaving Guyana.
Okay, that was the beginning.
That was the beginning.
Right.
But when we got here, it was we had to find coats to cover ourselves. It wasn't as stylish as that. And I mean, I was wearing pink, like that pink, when I was leaving home. Here, it was just an overcoat, just a coat. My sister was wearing blue. You know, everything was matched. Our hats matched. Our everything was really stylish, very good. Yeah.
So great. Well, I think that it's time to actually ask people for questions.
There was one thing that happened to me while I was in the UK. After I'd finished my training, this isn't in Somerset, this was in Bristol. I'd finished my SRN and finished my Part 1 midwifery, and I wanted a job in between Part 1 and Part 2 midwifery. And I went to an agency, and I said to them, I've got my SRN, I've got this, and I've won prizes. And the lady looked at me and said to me, well, we don't take people like you. and that really shook me, because that had never happened to me in Taunton. And I had to live on my savings for a month. It wasn't a lot, but I had to live on my savings. And that was, to me, that was the toughest thing that ever happened, because it never happened while I was here. Yeah. But on the whole, I've had a good life, thank God. Yes. I always say that I've met angels all the way, including this one here. All the way I've met people who've been good to me. I just have to say something, and they would say, we'd like you to do this, or what about trying this? And because I have difficulty in saying no, I do it. And then there's always some reward at the end of it. You know, I've been touched with. I've been extremely lucky. What I should have said, it's not only Musgrove Park we had East Reach Hospital. Yes. And when I first started, the first month we spent at East Reach. And that was the very old hospital where they had accident and emergency and the orthopedic areas. And patients used to be nursed outside in the balcony, even in the winter, if they had maybe TB or whatever. So that was quite an eye-opener. And I actually saw patients with the prison ward numbers on their arms. I said, what's that? And they were tattooed on, and I'd never come across anything quite like that. You know, so it was 28 bedded wards, and that was the East Reach. But in Musgrove Park, the wards were called, they were like 1, 2, 3, they were numerical numbers. Yes, I could remember Ward 10 and gynecology ward. Yes, that's how it was. And everything had to be done by 8 o'clock. All the beds had to be made by 8 o'clock. That's when you went off duty for the morning shift. So could you imagine how, you know, it was crazy bed making. I mean, I can make one of those corners like in my dreams. It was so fast you had to do it. But yes, when matron was coming around, everybody had to be sitting straight up in bed, and you had to be sort of, you know, it was very sort of military in that sense, because the war had just finished, and I think people had that style.
Were they called the Nightingale wards? Nightingale wards?
Nightingale wards. And we had a fireplace in the middle of the ward, whereas when people on night duty, those who didn't want to work sat around it, and the others who wanted to work just it was like a fireplace. They didn't have central heating. It was coal fires.
And where did you go when it was, in the hospital? You had some recreational time. Where did you go? Did you have a sitting room or something?
We had a sitting room, but we had a small television, and Coronation Street was just started around about then. So everybody used to run around that. Yes, and yes, Enid Sharples with her, yes, we used to see that. Yes, and Hancock, and we used to half hour, yes. Gosh, yes, you really take me back.
So, when you went to Buckingham Palace, that wasn't the first time that you'd been near royalty, was it? Because there was the time when the Queen Mother came to Taunton.
Oh, that's right. Oh, because you remember, because there's a picture in the corridor where Queen Mother was there, and we were there, and we had to form a guard of honor for her and so on. So, but she didn't see me personally, but yes, I was there to greet her.
You had your uniforms on. What colour was the uniform?
Our uniforms were yellow, unusual colour. Yes, you've never seen them. Yellow uniforms, yes. Whereas, and when you became a staff nurse, you wore pink. Yeah, pink dresses. Yes, yes, it was really quite something unusual, because in London they wear blues and things like that. Yes, that's it.
Should we talk a little bit about the book, the Nursing a Nation? That book, you're in that book, and people can actually have a look at it if they so wish. We certainly displayed it in Frome, and people were really interested to read your story. And the book was part of the statue as well, that's at the Whittington.
Yes.
And the statue was because so many nurses came from the Caribbean, the Commonwealth, that to train at the Whittington, and that's why the statue was there. So did you enjoy the whole business of the statue unveiling?
I enjoyed the whole thing. And I enjoyed, most of the people who are in the book are people that I know.
Yes.
Because they've all sort of achieved something within the NHS, and have had, you have the midwife who looked after the princes.
Yes.
And so on, and she's done a fantastic job in publicising Jacqueline, yes.
So that was that book, and that's not the only sort of statue unveiling that you've been to, because you were also at the Mary C. Cole.
Mary C. Cole, and then I was invited to the Antiques Roadshow to represent the NHS, and this book, this one of the early ones. My name has changed because I used to be Murray, and then my first name when I was born was Richards, so I held on to that one, and now I'm Richards Lord, so I've gone double-barreled. But this one, Many Rivers to Cross, that was done a few years ago, and you can see in front of this book. It shows you what it's like when you actually land in England. All the suitcases and people having to sort out. That's us landing there. That's not me in particular, but that's all the suitcases there. And I've still got my suitcase from 1959.
What about Christmas time? What went on at Christmas? I think you talked on the radio this week. You said the first Christmas at Musgrove was a lonely one, but after that they got better.
Yes, it got better.
Yeah.
Because on our days off, we had an egg for our breakfast.
Oh.
Yes.
What, you kind of moved up and you suddenly were able to get a decent breakfast.
Oh yes, oh yes. I mean, when the matron saw me crying, and I said, I'm crying because I'm homesick, because I was homesick, because, I was thinking, in my father's house, he had so much food, but that was the first Christmas. But after that, it was great. I mean, it invited out and had great Christmases. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Okay, so did you also do some sort of singing and everything like that? You talked about that, didn't you? The shanty songs.
We did folk songs. Yeah. We formed a group and we did some folk songs. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Good. Okay, well, before we kind of going to move on to the next bit, I just wanted to actually kind of talk a little bit about, you know, the fact that for some nurses there was discrimination. Did you ever experience discrimination when you?
Yes. That incident that I had, but I really managed everything else. I mean, I was in a position where I couldn't, if they tried it, they couldn't go very far with it.
So, you know, like for the Windrush generation, we hear so many stories, and as families, we're so very proud that it was a struggle, and that, you know, sort of for some, it was really, really difficult.
Yes, for some people, it was very difficult to get promotion, because I've been on programs where they said, you know, because I was black, I wasn't able to get promotion. But the first time I went for a nursing officer's post, I really wasn't prepared for it. And I think with a lot of these things, you have to ask yourself the question, why didn't I get it? And could you explain to me what I have to do in order to succeed? And that's what I did. And I got feedback, and I worked on that feedback, and I never stopped after that. Just moved on from there. Just be prepared.
Mm. So, you know, as I say, we've heard a lot about the struggle, and as families, we've witnessed that struggle. The hardship living hand to mouth for some people that were really, really struggling, and how that had an impact on their families as well, sort of, you know, because obviously you came at 20, as did other nurses, and for some it wasn't long before they were starting families as well, and childcare and nursing sometimes was tough. You know?
But childcare comes into it, because that picture with my parents there, when she was nearly 2, because she was 23 months, right? You mustn't forget that. It was very difficult finding somebody who can really look after her to my satisfaction, and I had to work. So I thought the best thing to do, my parents were happy for her to come and stay with them, and she didn't want to come back. And she always said to me, that was the best time of my life. But she had to come back because I wanted her back.
But it's part of the Caribbean story, isn't it? That some children were going to join parents that had gone over there to get started and what have you. And sometimes that didn't ever work out so well, because time had passed and families had changed, and sometimes marriages had broken down and all sorts of things. Yeah. And in fact, like you say, some people who were nurses were having to send their children back because they were having sort of, you know, experiences about their children being careful that were worrying and things.
Yes, you find that you have somebody who's supposed to be looking after your child, and it isn't until you're ready to go and collect the child that's when they're changing their nappies, you know, and ended up with sores and things like that. So you just don't want that for your child.
No.
And you think, well, if I've got to work, that would be, the best person would be my mother. And in fact, it turned out that when she was nearly 5, ready to come back to school, my mother was able to bring her over. And then my mother stayed with us until she was 95.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So it's worked out.
In terms of, what would you say the experience of black, because we're here and it's Women's History Month and we're talking to you as a woman, but what do you think the experience was like for black nurses? When I went to the Retired Caribbean Nurses exhibition, I didn't hear so much about black nurses, you know, male nurses. You know,
nurses, yes.
Did they move up a bit quicker in terms of, you know, their careers?
I think most of them went into mental nursing.
Okay.
Yes, because it probably suited their way of working and temperament, whatever. but they didn't do as well in sort of general nursing, but in mental nursing they did, and being a tutor as well. We had a few who did very well in that.
So, I mean, guys, when you, if within our region, if ever you want to know more about nursing and its history, you could go to Glenside Museum. Some of you might know about it, but it's at Stapleton in there in Bristol, and you know, there's some leaflets here. I went recently. It was a fascinating exhibition. One of the nurses there is a nurse that was a nurse. She was a health visitor in Somerset, and she was also came initially to Somerset to be a matron. She talks about being in Barbados, which is where she came from, and how Enoch Powell was there recruiting nurses, and how she heard his speech. So, you know, very, very interesting sort of exhibition, and very interesting stories to be told. But at this particular point, I wondered if we could maybe reflect back on the Windrush generation of nurses and those that followed. When you went on to the Antiques Roadshow, which I think the filming was done at St. Bart's, yeah. I know that Chrissy, you were there, and you know, some of the other Caribbean nurses were there. It was in the Windrush 75th anniversary year, which was not last year, it was the year before. It was the Antiques Roadshow special on nursing, but it wasn't only about Windrush, it was about sort of the history of nursing. Tell us a little bit about that. Was it a good experience?
It was a wonderful experience. I mean, in many ways, you would like to have been prepared more in advance, but once it was there, that was fine. I mean, we were able to talk about my buckle and things that.
Would you like to hold your buckle? When were you given that?
This buckle was given to me when I got my prize for the practical nursing
At Musgrove.
at Musgrove. So this is linked with Musgrove.
How precious is it?
Very precious. This is going to be handed down to her. Yes, it's very precious for me.
So the nurses that followed on from you guys then, because obviously I've been certainly calling you Somerset's trailblazer, you know, as a nurse. And I know that you blazed a tremendous trail in our Musgrove Park Hospital here in Somerset.
You're very kind to say that.
And, well, it was. And, you know, I don't know if we can claim you as the first, because I think there were other nurses there from the Caribbean too.
Oh, there were?
Yeah,
yes.
so you can't be our first black nurse. You were all right with that,
no,
you know.
No.
But you were there for sure. The call went up, the call to come to the motherland, you came to Somerset.
Absolutely, yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, there were others.
Yes.
But yeah, just thinking back on that time, you know, you know, there were nurses that followed you guys, and you know, you had, you know, that generation of nurses had done a tremendous job. Lots of hardship. Discrimination we haven't heard about today. For those that you don't know, it's the Race Relations Act 1965. It's the anniversary year this year. And for sure, there were nurses that suffered discrimination, and it was very, very, very difficult. And that was really crushing experience, I know, and very, very damaging. Perhaps we talk about the trauma of that for nurses that went through that experience.
And I think the matron made a lot of difference, because she was a good leader, and she was able to help us to integrate and to, because she said she was the one who started the idea of having folk songs and said, you can contribute that way, and we jumped the idea. It was good. So it made the community realize that we've got something to offer, not only nursing, but some fun as well.
Yeah. So I think we've heard a lot about your contribution, not only to Somerset, and that's something to be held up very high, but also throughout your nursing career. And what I know, because you know, somebody told me you were retired, but I can't see much of it. You know, I know that you're involved in so many things, and long may they continue.
So, optimist. I belong to Inner Wheel, which is part of Rotary, and I belong to Mothers Union. So I'm still keep going.
And the diabetics?
Oh yes, yes, because my husband, he's a diabetic, and I wasn't happy about how he was being treated, and they Diabetes UK, I told them about it, and they said to me, well, we can train you to become a champion. So I became a champion, diabetic champion, and went all over London to do it, so, and so I still get asked to give talks to do that. And where I am in Croydon, we have a street called Surrey Street, and I actually set up a stall with all the equipment for diabetes, and in order to attract people, for them to come and see what it's all about and ask questions and give them that sort of information. Because I think sometimes it's not just good to be in a hospital. It's good to go out to the community and spread the word to them so that people can ask questions if they feel shy. And it's amazing how many people would come and say, I've got a husband who's this, or what should I eat? What should I drink? So it's amazing, and it's only talking. I mean, but it's helping people to understand their condition. And one of the things I'd suggested to Diabetes UK is that we should do things in barbershops, because men are the worst when it comes to looking after their health, and they've actually started putting people into barbershops to do their blood pressures and so on, because if they don't come to you, you've got to go to them, and that's what I believe in that.
How important do you think the Windrush story is to tell? I was in a meeting last night, an online meeting. Certainly, the people there were actually very keen to see Windrush being sort of taught in the curriculum more fully than it really is right now. How do you think we could improve? Why is it so important to tell this story?
I think it's so important that to people to know that we came. You could call us Windrush, whatever they want to call us, but we came and we wanted to give something, because we got education and so on, and we got the knowledge, and we want to share our knowledge, and it should be just accepted gracefully, because the young people need to know that we, the older generation, we've had hardships, but not dire hardships, but we've made a contribution. We've made changes. I mean, I can say that in my small way, I've made changes with regard with maternity services, but we've got to keep pressing the point that young people need to know what goes on so they can carry the banner and get on with it. Do what they have to do. Give as much as they can, and give with fun, give it with friendliness, but give with love as well, because if you love people, you want to see people healthy, regardless of what colour they are. You just want them to be healthy and happy.
So you're talking about serving, aren't you? The service.
It's about service. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right, to end on, we've got this lovely flag, and the High Commission have, given it to you to bring here today. Yes. It has importance to you. What does your flag mean to you?
Oh, well. It's like my country. It means a lot to me. Just like how Somerset means a lot to me, Guyana means a lot to me. I mean, I've been. It's a land of great opportunities. It's a land that was very poor once. It's now one of the richest countries in the world. When I up to 5 years ago, I was sending to Guyana toilet paper, syringes, this and that. They found oil. Now they can give me something. In fact, but I don't want anything from Guyana. I just want to see them looking after the people, and that's really important. Cricket is very important to Guyana.
Let's hear about cricket. It will satisfy that gentleman. So you're part of the top 10, isn't it? Am I right on that? The top 10.
Part of the top 10, and it's got some of the best cricketers. People like Clive Lloyd, and you know them better than I do. But I mean, Calituran, yes, yes, I know. It's a wonderful game. If my husband was here, he'd be the one who would tell you about cricket. But it's
Did you see any cricket in Somerset? Did you see any cricket in Somerset?
when I was here, I went once.
Did you?
But you know, if my husband was here, he'd be dominating the scene about cricket because he's glued to it all the time, and he would jump out and say, "Come and see, come and see." It's just they want one run, just one run they need. You know, he gets so excited about it. It's a wonderful game, and it unites the Caribbean. It's one of the things we've got the language, but we've got cricket. And as I say, it's something that I'm very proud of. The goal represents gold, yes, and that is bloodshed. But and the green, it's a very green country, full of mountains and greenery and waterfalls. And I hope one day I bought some cards. I hope each and every one of you would go to see Guyana, because it has hidden treasures. Since we've had oil, the British government has actually started an airline from Gatwick direct to Guyana. We never used to have that. You never had that before. As you know, I came by ship, but we used to have to go to Barbados and then stay overnight to go to Guyana. Not now. It's just amazing what oil can do. You know, it's sad, but it's amazing how. But it's a place for young people because it has so many opportunities, and I would encourage every young person to look it up and check it out because it's worth going to. I was there in September, and I'll give you the answer. They're building 6 new hospitals. We used to have one main hospital that was in Georgetown. And of course, it's a vast country, and people used to go from a place called Letham, which is miles and miles away, 200 miles away, had to go by air. By the time, if somebody was having a baby, there was no chance. Now, they've actually built, and these are modern hospitals that they're building. All they need now is the people to be there. It's a place for the future.
Do you think the series Call the Midwife gives us quite a good insight into... It's probably the wrong thing to say. Does it tell the story well? Does it give us some insight into what it was really like, not only from the midwife's point of view, but also communities and patients and what have you, people having babies?
I think it does. I think it's
kind of covered quite a bit, hasn't it?
Yes, I think it does. Because I mean, that was part of my life at one stage, and I could see little bits of it where people can have an insight about what it's like.
Did you ride the bike? You know, did you have a bike?
Before I learned to drive the car, I used to ride the bike. I rode the bike in Birmingham. That's where I did my district midwifery training, and then.
Are there any photos? I haven't seen any yet. You haven't passed on yet.
In those days, we didn't take so many photos, you know.
We didn't know you didn't know the value of it.
No, we didn't. I've got one photo with me in the car, but yeah. I touched on it a little bit because I thought the question of giving personalized care is so important, because it's treating people how you would like to be treated yourself. And that's one of the things that Taunton taught me, because I remember being with a dying patient, And I just sat down and held his hand and just talked to him because he didn't have anybody else there. And I was just treating him how I would like to be treated myself. And and the personalized care that I introduced in midwifery leads from that, because it stems from when I was a district midwife. Because when I was a district midwife, I loved my patients loved me. And they used to say to me, don't go off on a day off when I get into labor. But you know, you build up a relationship, and this is really what needs to happen. I knew I always wanted to do midwifery. It wasn't a burning issue, but when I actually started my training, I thought, this is for me. It's positive nursing, because you more or less ended up, in most cases, with a positive outcome. You aim for that, and that's what I liked about midwifery. And you end up with not only a happy mother, happy baby, happy family. You know, that's. Oh gosh, yes. Well, don't talk about the shifts. Those were hard. Yeah. Because we used to have what we called from 10 to 2 and 2 to 10, which meant we started at 7:30. We started at 7 in the morning. We off at 10 o'clock for coffee, back at 2, and finished at 8 o'clock at night. So it was a long day because you started from 7. And then in the afternoon shift, if you had an afternoon shift off, you started at 7, finished at 2, then back after 4:30 for tea, finished at 8. So it was long days. First of all, is that her choice? Yes, because it has to be your choice. You don't have to be forced into it. But if that's your choice, then you know, talk to somebody who's been successful in nursing. When I say successful, who loved her job. Talk to somebody who knows about her job. Ask questions about it. Ask about the shifts. Ask about the money. Ask about what sort of work, what the patients are like with you, what your colleagues are like with you, what can you offer, what qualities you've got. All those things come into it.
And hope for angels.
And hope for angels. Yes. Very true. Very true. Yes.
We need to come to a bit of an end.
But can I ask you to show your appreciation of our Somerset trailblazer nurse?